Offered by Mr. Perry of Pennsylvania.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1370, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Perry, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment prohibits the use of funds to take retaliatory actions against states that disagree with the EPA mandate pollutant reduction goals that have been imposed upon them by the EPA. Importantly, this amendment would not prevent the EPA from working with states to restore things like the Chesapeake Bay, which is what the EPA is supposed to be doing. In 1985, the states in the Chesapeake Bay region recognized the need to address pollutants in the bay, and through their own initiative, came together to conduct cleanup efforts. These state-driven efforts were largely successful. Water quality improved almost 50% from 1985 to 2010 without the EPA's involvement. But in 2010, the EPA seized the state's authority to determine their own method of compliance and threatened to take over the water quality plans. This 2010 power grab, known as the Chesapeake Bay TMDL, Total Maximum Daily Load, directly contradicts the intent of the Clean Water Act. The Clean Water Act clearly acknowledges state authority in water quality and requires cooperation, which is happening through the Chesapeake Bay Commission, rather than coercion between the states and the federal government. These coercive methods have been tried and have failed. Water quality improvement has slowed, and last year, the EPA acknowledged the 2025 goals likely cannot be met. The failures we've seen since federalization of the Bay cleanup efforts necessitate the reevaluation of this model and a return to the cooperative model that led to the early improvements and actual success. I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Maine rise?
I seek time in opposition.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to this amendment. This amendment would allow those that pollute the Chesapeake Bay to ignore the Environmental Protection Agency's water quality standards. Restoring the Chesapeake Bay and its watershed continues to be a priority. The EPA established mandatory water quality standards, and Congress has appropriated over $1 billion for the Chesapeake Bay program to help states, localities, and businesses meet those standards. This amendment would jeopardize that funding and have devastating effects on the health of the Bay. This amendment is not about the well-being of Virginia, Maryland, and the surrounding states. It's about the fact that some industrial operators don't think they should be responsible for controlling the pollution they dump into our rivers and streams across the country. The courts have sided with the EPA on this matter. For more than 35 years, the regional partnership created through the Chesapeake Bay program has sought to restore and protect the nation's largest and most productive estuary. This amendment would undermine decades of work and have lasting damaging effects to the health of the Bay and the economy that it supports. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Again, let me clarify. Prohibits the use of fund to take retaliatory actions. Retaliatory. We're already working together. We're working with the EPA. As you said, this is a regional partnership and has been a regional partnership. This isn't about industry getting a free pass to pollute anywhere. This is about the heavy-handed coercive tactics of the EPA on states that want to do this, that got into this because this is what they wanted to do. We don't need the EPA. By the way, if you go to some of these plants, treatment plants, the EPA's requirements, you know what they are, Mr. Chairman? Beyond the limits of technology. You've got to treat the water to beyond the limits of technology. You think about what that statement says. It says you can't get there from here. But the EPA is still going to fine you if you can't get there from here while acknowledging you can't get there from here. All we're saying is don't spend money on the extortionary, retaliatory, coercive tactics. Spend the money, if you're going to spend it, on actually working together to clean up the Bay. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from Maine is recognized.
I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman
I'm prepared to close. If the
Pennsylvania.
gentlelady's prepared to close.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Reserve.
Okay. Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Okay. Well, I don't know what else you need to hear. We're not against the EPA. We're not against cleaning up the bay. We're not against spending the money to clean up the bay. What we're against is the retaliatory actions that don't help clean up the bay and waste our money. And by the way, since we're talking about it, while Pennsylvania continues to try to get beyond the limits of technology that the EPA acknowledges, some of the other states in the compact aren't interested, but aren't fined under these retaliatory practices. This is punishment to some states, but not to others, which we see as unfair, as you might imagine. I reserve.
Gentleman from reserves, gentlelady from Maine.
I reserve.
Gentlelady from Maine reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Maine has the right to close last.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maine has the right to close.
I reserve.
You reserve?
I do.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Well, I think I've made my point, and the fact that the gentlelady is reserving means there's probably no other point to make, but I'm happy to listen, so I yield the balance.
The gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Maine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that anytime I hear one of my colleagues across the aisle say, we don't need the EPA, or that the actions of the EPA are extortion or retaliatory, I don't know about the specific actions that he's talking about today. But I do know someone as someone who represents a state with as much coastline as any state in the nation, with estuaries, with bays, with an extreme dependence on our shorelines, on our watersheds, on the ocean itself. Know that the Chesapeake Bay is an incredible resource to this country. The health of the bay has been a big concern for over 35 years, and the work that the EPA does to keep it clean is extremely important. So this amendment that attempts to undermine those efforts, to undermine decades of work, is absolutely unnecessary, not anything that any of us should support, and has the likely impact of undermining the efforts of our fishermen, our residents of coastal communities, the economy in the Chesapeake Bay, and is a misguided amendment. So I urge my colleagues to oppose the amendment, and I yield back my time.
Lady yields back. The question is on